So I remember going in Tower Records. My uncle was with me, and I was, I think, another band member, and I opened up, and I read the review, and they just killed it. And I remember my uncle just going, well, at least you can go work for your dad in trucking.
It's so crazy, the line.
It's just like,
old school shit.
yeah.
They say lines that are like the worst thing you ever would want to tell. Like, you would never say that nowadays, you know, to your son, like, hey, you know, fuck your dream. You know?
Yeah, well, you know, it's like, well, at least you know, well, fuck that, you know, and,
Yeah.
well, you weren't that good at it anyways, or something like that.
Hey, thanks for checking out the show. And if you like it, tell a friend. And if you want to support the show, you can by 1, subscribing and liking our YouTube channel at the DMW Podcast. 2, you can go to our website and sign up to our mailing list at the dmwpodcast.com. And 3, you can follow us on Instagram at the DMW Podcast. Thanks again for all of your support. My name is Stef, and this is the Dead Man Walking Podcast.
Jason.
Yes.
Dude, I'm so happy to have you here, man.
Me too.
One, I hadn't seen you since actually Astro Gates, when you guys had
Yeah,
when you
when
had
they
Astro
came
Gates on
into
the show.
Yeah.
And it had been, I think, 2-3 years, because I had left Bell at the time.
Right.
And I left right at the pandemic, so I never got a chance to say
Yeah,
bye.
no one, I mean, I was in that building for 3 years, and I think I saw 4 people. It was like crazy, man. It was like I went to work every day still. I never stopped.
It's crazy, because you were there by yourself, and for me, it was like, I remember before, like, leaving, I never got a chance to say bye to anybody.
Right.
And you were
That's kind of commonplace there.
Yeah.
That happens sometimes, you know?
Exactly.
You might be there and you're like, oh wait, can I say bye to me? No, you can't say bye to anybody.
Exactly. You know, so I had that feeling of always like, oh man, I would have liked to have said bye to certain people, and definitely you were one of those people. So to have you on the show, I'm really happy to.
Yeah, me too, man. We always got along, and you know, that's the funny thing with that building is that you know, we all worked on Papillon and René Levesque, and there were so many floors, and at the time, like I remember, there's a time when that building was just packed full of people, and the only times you would see people would be like, you know, if we did a Christmas party or if we did a rock room or something, you know, or once in a while you might bump into someone and it'd be like, and especially, you know, a lot of the salespeople and stuff, like you would maybe see them if there was something going on, like a remote but it was always like that where you wouldn't get, you know, you'd be saying, oh, you're really cool, I'd love to hang out with you and talk to you, and it was just like, you know, craziness, and I'm sure pandemic just, I mean, so many people weren't. I don't even know how many people are back to work.
Exactly.
I think the whole business model of having, you know, one real estate location to have people in is just going to go out the window more and more. You know, people are with Zoom and with everything, you can just do work from home. And
you do the exact same amount of work, and probably
more.
more.
Yeah, that's what I would always hear from people that work in
yeah.
the office. Like, I'd never get anything done because people would come. Like, my wife used to work at Bell, and she said, like, she would be working and people would just come by her desk constantly.
Yeah.
And sit and talk, and she's like, I get more stuff done at home. Like, I could get my whole day done in 3 hours.
100%.
And it's, yeah.
And that's why it was like, it was such a crazy moment, obviously, at time. But I remember, like, I always told myself, like, oh, fuck, I'd like to see Jay again, you know, say at least bye, whatever. And then that Astro Gates appearance on the show.
That was great.
It was such a great time to kind of, like, say hi to you. And then all of a sudden, this show started coming up on, and I was like, oh, man, I'd love to get Jason on.
Yeah, happy to do it, man.
I think there's such a great story, one, of just, you know, from the Slaves on Dope, how we got into that, like, and all the, but there's so many things here, like, dude, like, it's fucking crazy. You are literally doing a million things at the same time. You're one of the hardest working guys, I think, in show business, because, dude, like, you recently just, like, even pranked the ex-president, like to that level. Like, it's amazing.
It's funny because I don't like to sip. I don't like to sit back too much, and I'm always, I guess in a way it's a blessing and it's a bit of a curse because it's not that I'm never satisfied, but I'm always on to the next thing. Like, I never sit and go like, wow, this is amazing, and I need to do that more. And I try to, as much as I can, just to really enjoy any kind of accomplishment.
Yeah.
You know?
What do you think? Why do you think that you act that way?
I think it's that old school, you know, coming from the family that I came from, like my grandfather being an immigrant, and then my dad being, my dad being a really hard worker who never stopped to smell the flowers. Like, my dad was always just like it was almost like, well, you work and that's what you do, and it's not about, well, you want to be happy, and it's like, well, you can't be happy if you're not making money. And it's like, it was this weird thing where, and I don't equate happiness with money at all.
Yeah.
But I do enjoy work, and I do enjoy. I'm lucky because everything I do work-wise I enjoy.
Yeah.
Which is a feat in itself. because some people just hate their jobs. And then they find these passions and they're like, oh, I wish I could make more money with my passion. And I think the loss of focus is where you try, well, the mistake people make is when you try to make your passion your work, and you put a monetary value on that. Like, I think the reward is that you are working in your passion. But the flip side to that is that you can't, there's no on off switch. Like, you're always working. So you're always you're like, yeah, I love my work, but I'm always working. You know what I mean? Like, I'm always available. I'm always on my phone. I'm always plotting the next thing. And it's great, but it's also, I think it's because of the background that I came from. And I think it's because of that mentality that I grew up around. But I think I've skewed it in a way that I at least enjoy what I do. And I'm happy. And I do have a good balance in my life. But yeah, I like projects. I like to be busy. And you know, I think you go through this thing once, right? And as you get older, you start to really think, man, there's only so much time I have on the planet. Like, what am I going to do with it? And what do I want to do with it? And that's where it starts to get a little squirrely in my head. I'm like,
it's so true, because I feel the same when we were talking about this earlier about like when you know what your passions are, and and I always wanted to save the monetary element, kind of like put it aside, because then all of a sudden it skews the image of the passion.
It makes you really, sometimes it clouds the vision for me. It clouds where I should be, you know. And when whenever I've chased money, I've never done well. Whenever I've chased happiness, I've been okay. Exactly. Everything's been provided for me. It's been taken care of. You know?
But it's tough. It's tough because, you know, the money element is such a big part of why you go to work, right? And you know,
and fear, you know, like fear is the other thing. Like I fear, so many people are crippled by fear now. And I find I see it more and more younger people, people in general, they can't get a grasp on fear. And you know, I'm one of these people that's always kind of tried to face my fears. I've never really worried about it. I've been in situations where I was younger, like I was kind of fearless.
Yeah.
And it was stupid in some situations because I had no regard for authority. I just was like, whatever, like what's going to happen? You know?
Like what? Like
telling I remember being in, I think, grade 10 I went to the school for Winston Churchill in Saint Laurent High, and it's probably not around anymore. And I remember in grade 10, I got into trouble, and I told my principal basically to fuck off. Okay. And I remember I got kicked out of the school, and I had to go to another school halfway through grade 10 or Sec 4 and then do Sec 5 there as well. And I never thought twice about that. I was just like, what's she going to do?
Yeah.
You know, and it's just that kind of attitude, which was, I've never been scared of like making a decision and living with the consequences. Yeah. Which is kind of, in a good way, it's good because I'm not scared to change. Yeah. I've never been scared to change. But I'm a little more conscious of the results, like the byproduct of change, because it can affect a lot of people around you. Yeah. So, and
do you feel like that changed now because, you know, the family, the kids, an element, or is it just, or are there things in life that's made you think a little differently about that?
Well, there's been a couple of turning points in my life. One of them was getting sober, young, 21. So that changed a lot of the way I viewed certain things. I was still kind of fearless, but I had a healthy fear of relapsing. Like I would never want to relapse. Yeah. And I never would want to relapse. So that's probably the only fear that I really deal with. Of course, I think for my kids, like I fear for my kids, like, you know, their safety and stuff like that. Normal parent stuff. But I think I know now that when change happens, there's a reason for it. When major changes happen in your life, it's because you're meant to go down a different path. And there's these forks in the road. Like there's a lot of them in your life. You can make one decision there or one decision there. It's like hallway number 1 or hallway number 2, you know, red pill, blue pill, whatever the analogy is. But I really do believe you have those moments in your life where you have those decisions to make, and they can really change which path you go on. But if you look at it as a journey and kind of an adventure, then it's not so bad. It's like, well, you know, yeah, of course, hindsight, I can look back and go, man, you know, if I would have listened and would have written with this guy, and instead of saying, no, we can write our own music, then maybe we would have had a different path of success. But
you can't look at it.
You can't look at it
because I find when you start going down that path, to be honest.
Oh yeah,
it's just what if all day. Yeah. What if I did this way? But you didn't. So don't harp on that because it's going to kill you.
But learning from your mistakes, I think, is good, and trusting. Like I'm a big gut guy, so like I like to trust my gut. I like to trust my my inner voice, whatever it is, your higher power, like whatever whatever your concept of whatever that voice is, you know, like some people call it Jesus, some people call it whatever they call it.
Yeah.
I call it that voice in my head or my gut. And my gut will tell me like, you might be careful. But so I do like to weigh pros and cons a little bit before, not so much act in emotion, like telling your principal to fuck off.
Well, that's a teenager thing too.
Yeah,
right?
it is. But the teenage behavior can stay. Like I'm a big kid, you know. I'm
Same
still
here.
a big kid. I still, you know, I still have that little rebel inside me that wants to, you know, like I always like to challenge authority a little bit, and it's better when you're older because at least you have a bit of experience and knowledge behind you to back up your challenging. But
Yeah.
there's some people like I don't like to argue for the sake of arguing, but when I go to bat for something, when I really believe in it, I'm pretty principled that way. But I like discussion. I like keeping things open, but when I you know, like when I go to bat 100% on a subject or on an opinion, then it's because I really strongly believe it.
Yeah.
You know, but
I feel like I try to talk less now, unless I feel like I have something to actually say. If if there's a story that can actually bring value here, I'll talk about it.
Yeah.
If there's something that I feel adds value to this conversation, then let me talk. But if not, you know what, listening is pretty good.
Oh yeah.
Before I fucking never listened.
No.
I was like, I just needed to be the loudest voice in the room because my opinion was so important and all this stuff. So I feel like as you get older, you start recognizing that the people that probably know the most are the ones that speak the least.
And being the stupidest person at the table with any situation you're in, like going to the table, going like, you know, I'm humbled because I'm around really smart people and successful people, and I love the idea of being surrounded by people that are talented and successful and in their own right, and learning from that and not being threatened by it.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing now. Like I'm able to see my peers do well and be genuinely happy for
I know.
them and not jealous.
When I was younger, that was tough.
Yeah,
That was tough. But now it's like,
No.
I see a buddy and they're doing super well. I'm
happy for
I'm
them.
stoked for them.
Yeah,
I'm really happy.
And I have people in my life that are still like that. They're very bitter and they hold on to that. Like, and it's like, no, man, like just, you know, congratulate.
Yeah.
You know, celebrate. Like be happy for your friends and let their successes fuel you in the right way.
Yeah.
You know, and instead of making enemies, make friends. Like and I'm not saying, because there's this fine line between sucking up and kissing ass or
There's
or
friendly competition, and then
there's guys that do there's guys that do what I do, excuse me, that are really good at what they do, and I look at them as like almost mentors, you know.
Oh, yeah.
A guy like Strombo, and I know George. They were not like great friends or anything, but I know George. Like we've chatted before, and he was a big fan of Slaves on Dope when Slaves on Dope was starting, and he supported us when he was at Much Music and stuff. And I look at George and how he lives his life and how he's not beholden to anyone, you know, like he's worked for big media outlets and he does his own thing now, and he has his own thing on Apple Music, and he calls his own shots, and I love that. And I look at it sometimes, I'm like, man, I'm fucking like so happy for him and proud of him, and at the same time, it's like it's a motivator for me. You know, because this guy's living his best life. Now, do I speak to George every single day? Do I know what's going on in his head? Do I know his challenges and all that? No. And everybody has them. But, you know, we project these lives online that are, and I think what I like about him is that he's authentic, you know?
But he was that from day one. Like
Always.
I think that's why he was so different and unique in the crowd, because he stood out instantly. He just came out. He did what he did from a Much Music perspective. I remember George was cool on Much Music all the way up to even when he showed up on hockey. When he was in hockey, he was one of my favorite guys on the hockey panel. And it was like, I guess it didn't fit, but it was just, he didn't change who he was. Even when he was doing hockey.
And that was always my thing. You know, when I switched careers from music to media, I always refused to be, I always wanted to be me. I didn't want to conform.
How did you get into CHOM? Because I know that I think it was like a journey of like almost 12, 13 years that you were there. So
was that right before I was there? 13 years and 7, almost made 14.
Okay. Dude, I to be honest, like the nights with, I would put on CHOM, and and I loved listening to your voice, especially the 90s at 9. That was always my favorite time of the night. And
that was P-Card.
It was P-Card that brought you in?
It was P-Card that started the 90s at 9.
Okay. Oh shit.
That.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I remember like just listening, and the one thing that I always enjoyed about the show was that it was like Jason was talking to his friends on there.
Yeah.
Like that's how I felt. I felt like I was a buddy of yours listening to it. And at the same time, you always brought on local bands, or you always talked about local bands, and it must have been obviously the connection back to Slaves on Dope. And
I think it was me just trying to be authentic and I love music. I love 90s music. It's my decade. You know, it's my big decade where I came, you know, the 80s and 90s were important to me, but the 90s were an interesting decade for music because there was no boundaries.
Exactly.
There's no boundaries. There's no rules.
Yeah, everything changed.
It was really nice. And so to be able to have an hour every night or 5 nights a week to focus on that was so fucking fun.
Yeah.
But you know, it's funny because the local band thing, I saw it with Too Tall. I remember Too Tall when he had Made in Canada and when CHOM was, you know, doing the CHOM Esprit contest and all that. And
I remember those contests.
And he helped us, and we won that, and we had a relationship with him because of that. I remember I would see him doing Made in Canada and all the work he would put into it, and the focus he would put on local bands, and I really, really wanted to be that guy, you know, and I got the opportunity to do it, and I kind of I also went out of my way to, you know, if we would get a big shiny new song of the week,
Exactly,
and it would be a band, I would reach out to the band, and it wasn't the station doing this, it was me going, hey, guys, let's get you to play on the show. Let's get you in on the show. And of course, you know, as long as the band was being played, it was a win-win for CHOM too.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, well, this guy's going and getting interviews. And like, you know, most of the time when I would do an interview on CHOM, it wouldn't be them going, can you talk to this person? It would be me going, I've got this person to come on. Are you cool with it? You know?
Well, but it showed instantly because the conversations, you knew all the content when you would be talking with them. Like it didn't sound like you prepped for an interview. You knew the band.
No.
You know, like you got to know them like through the music element,
Yeah.
or you looked around, like you listened to this band for a while, and even like the guests that you would get on, it would like even on your own podcast right now, the Power Hour.
Yeah.
You know, I think your second episode was Nikki Sixx, so it's not like it's like you're looking
we were
at
lucky, man. We were. I was thinking about that on the way over here because, you know, you're talking about what you're going to ask me how I started CHOM, but every place you start, everything you start, you have someone that believes in you at the beginning.
Yeah.
You know, whether it be in school, whether it be, you know, when you join a sales team and you like get that one person that goes, I'm going to give you a shot, and they kind of take you under their wing. And for the podcast, I remember our first guest was pretty much, I took a junket that I did for Dune.
Okay.
And an interview with Denis Villeneuve, an interview with a couple of the actors and cast of Dune. And I turned that, and then what I did was we talked about Dune with Bill from Mastodon.
Okay.
Who's a friend of mine, and we just talked about the old school Dune and then the new Dune. And we arranged for him to see the new Dune in Atlanta. They got a screening for him, and he went and saw it. So we were able to talk about the movie and stuff. And but my first real guest was John Taylor from Duran Duran.
Oh, man. I saw that.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a big sucker for Duran Duran.
Same.
Fucking love Duran. My brothers were huge Duran Duran fans.
Yeah.
So I remember that album's Rio playing all the time.
Oh, yeah.
It was such a great album.
I love Duran Duran. And the fact that I got him on the podcast, and I remember the guy I have to thank is Simon Fauteur from Six Media, who he was a musician, but he's a publicist now, and has a lot of really cool clients and does a lot of publicity work in Quebec. And he emailed a mass email about the new Duran Duran record, and I was like, oh man, I would love to talk to one of the guys from Duran Duran.
Yeah.
He's like, cool. When do you want to set it up? I'm like, well, let me just be transparent with you. This is for a new project I have. It's not for CHOM. It's for my podcast. And he just emailed me back. He goes, well, I don't care who it's for. I want them to talk to you.
Oh, that's
and that's
amazing.
when I was like,
how did you feel about that? Like just
really good.
Yeah.
Really, because it was a big, and the episode for us was a good one. Like it, I mean, you know, you put content online. It's like it's really hard to get people to listen to anything or and to get eyeballs and ears and stuff. But it really helped us a lot. And then Duran Duran shared the interview and their socials, and I was just like so fucking happy. And it was like out of the gate swinging, you know. And then
That's
we did,
amazing.
And Nikki Sixx and all these people started giving me guests because I was the one who would go get the guests anyways for anything I did. Like very rarely was something hand delivered to me. Like, here you go. Here, can you go interview this person? It happened, but I knew that if I wanted to get content done, I had to go get it. No one was going to bring me, you know, an opportunity.
Yeah.
Or they would be few and far between. So I think a lot of people I'd built up a name of, you know, people knew that he was the guy in Montreal to talk to. And then when the switch from CHOM to Rockman Power Hour happened, and I was still at CHOM for the first 2 years, it was a very seamless one.
Yeah,
you know,
because it was already building itself up.
Yeah,
and then
and
when the switch happened, it was like, and now it's doing great. Like I'm seeing the amount of views, the hours that are.
Yeah, we're you know, it's been 2 years, and what I like about it is that all those years that I did content, they were always on different platforms. Like, you know, I did a show on CJD for 2.5 years called On the Record, where I
Yeah.
talked to some massive people that I booked myself. But the biggest complaint was it would go up online. It would never go up online. It would be like, oh, you know, it
We
plays.
can never listen to it again.
No. And I would be like, when's it going to go up? And you know how it is. I mean, everyone's so busy, producing live content that
Yeah.
no one thinks of the back end. And it's just like anything, like when you're in a big corporate wheel, like it's just everything takes a while
Yeah.
to move. And so I remember I had like 100 episodes that had never gone online.
Oh shit!
And
that many episodes?
I did it for 2 years, that show.
Wow.
And every week I had a new guest on, and I had huge guests, dude, like Josh Groban. Like I had really, really big guests on the show.
Dude, if I look at who the people you've interviewed and you sat down and spoken to,
Yeah.
it ranges from local to Kirk Hammett.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
it's like Liam Gallagher's. Like, you
Yeah,
have
talk
like
to,
a...
and a lot of it was like, a lot of it was because I said yes, and because I was, and I guess at one point it was like, oh, he's not bad at it. Let's get him to do it. So, but the frustrating thing is, like, if I have to find my Liam Gallagher interview, I've got to search for it. And now what I like is that everything I do is on my channel.
So were you inspired kind of a bit on the Strombo element of that, of kind of having a bit more control of the content?
Yeah. Oh yeah, of course. 100%. And I think any creator, content creator, if you really care about your content, and I do, I think of it as like, when I'm dead, I want people to find all my stuff in one spot.
Yeah.
And so now it's like, I want to go find some of the older stuff I did. And like someone will open up a YouTube channel and they don't even try to monetize it. And you're looking at this interview and it's got 100,000 views and no one cares. And I'm like, well, I'm ripping that and I'm putting it on my channel soon.
Yeah.
Like, I got it. Like, I start to think of that. So having the most satisfying thing about producing the podcast is having all my stuff in one place.
Yeah, you find it's almost like you're reorganizing your career in a sense.
Yeah.
Where you're looking back and because you have a ton of stuff. Like, honestly, dude, when you look at it from just the band days of being on tour, I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff there. You have the albums, you have all these interviews from when you were at CHOM, the Power Hour. You have a million things, even the Comic-Con stuff, dude.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I'm saying, is you have so much going on all the time.
Yeah.
That it's for some people, one part of your life, it would be their career.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you have like 7 of them.
Yeah,
So,
I've got a lot. And again, like, I'm lucky to have gotten involved with some really cool stuff that I'm really passionate about. But everything I do, I like. And even I've started doing stuff with the with Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah, the Twitch.
Yeah, and that was cool. Like, this year they were like, "Hey, would you be interested in co-hosting
How did
the
that happen?
media day?"
Like, because of an internal, like, someone new, like, on the team?
It's funny because, last year there's a new mascot, Metal.
Yeah.
And Metal would walk around the Bell Center, and he had a roadie was with him, So a lot of times I would go to the games and I would watch Metal and Roadie, and I would take pictures of the two of them.
Nice. They're like a stalker.
Yeah, I don't know. The roadie was like, he's cool guy, weird though, and I guess I just kind of developed a relationship with that team, and they would ask me every once in a while to do little things, And I did an interview before the first Lasso with Nick Suzuki. I hosted like a Twitter Fences or Spaces, it was called. And I love the Montreal Canadiens team.
Yeah.
Like
You're a fan, like, dude.
Well, no, hockey, yes.
Yeah.
When I'm talking about the team, I mean like
Okay.
the media
team. Okay.
The media team, because they have a media creativity team, and it's like, I've always liked that idea of having a media creativity team. And I haven't worked in an environment that had a media creativity team for a long time.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah, your media creative is you.
Yeah. So like media creativity was like, so the idea of having a team that actively looks for different content outside of what the brand is,
Yeah.
I thought really interesting. So I love the idea of doing anything with the Habs, and of course I love the team. I mean, if you live in Montreal, like, you gotta, they're the team you're always going to cheer for. But
Unless you're a Bruins fan, like, there's that.
there's the odd weirdo, but I do love that organization for how professional they are and how they have great. I just like the way they work, especially their social media team and all that. They're just, John and Steven and Shauna and that whole team are great. I love anytime I have an opportunity to do anything with them. And the lead on that media day event was a girl named Safia, and she was just such a pleasure to deal with. And so positive, and at the same time, things changed. Like, at one point they had to change the day that it was happening, and she was so apologetic. I'm like, it's fine. Like, don't worry about it. Because I know what it's like to be on the other end of things, and when you have to deal with someone who's going to be a pain in the ass about something,
Yeah.
and when you can not be, and
Yeah,
you can
yeah,
just be nice and be like, hey, it's no worries, it's fun to be able to be that person, and it feels good to be able to not be a solution, not the problem.
Well, that's the thing. You've been on both sides of it, right?
Yeah.
You started off being the person getting interviewed when you had your band, and
Yeah.
then you're kind of striving for that. So you understand what it's like to get the questions asked to you.
Yeah, and I was always patient. I was never mean, but I also know what it's like to have fucking horrible questions. It would be in a conversation where you're like, some kid gets on the bus and you're like, and he shows up and he's got his like recorder and he's got his microphone. He's like, so tell me, what's the name of the band? And you're like, oh.
Well,
But
I was gonna say, like, when you look back now, right, to all those days and putting it into perspective, like, it feels like Slaves on Dope was almost I'd say to me, it was kind of like the beginning for a lot of bands here in the city. Like, there's a lot of
Yeah.
bands that whenever you talk to them and past like the next like generation, they mention the name Slaves on Dope.
Yeah.
They mention like
Yeah.
it's kind of like this one of those introductions in a sense to a whole new slew of bands that came out of Montreal.
Well, yeah, we were we were one of the only people, I guess, locally to be doing that kind of music. No one else really fit in with what we were doing. We didn't fit in with anybody else, so we kind of stood out. And I think we were. There had been bands that had made it in the U.S. before. The last one I really remembered were the Doughboys.
Yeah.
Like John Kastner and the Doughboys in the early '90s. They had toured the States. They had made it. But after that, we were pre Arcade Fire. We were pre the Stars. We were pre that Montreal boom that happened.
Yeah.
Like,
That indie vibe.
It
was like a new metal,
We were like we were more like part of that new metal, like the Limp Bizkits, the Corns, the Deftones. Like, we were almost on that second wave of it. And then there was subsequently, it was like third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh wave, whatever. But we were part of like almost the second wave of it. Maybe on the cusp of the third, but the second wave, we were really part of the second.
And how was it though? Just like seeing, because you don't usually, the Montreal band at the time, like you're getting a call and all of a sudden you're going to be signed to.
Yeah,
Ozzy's
there was
label.
no getting calls. Like, we had to go make.
That's
again,
what I say is you guys. I
had to
remember
go-
hearing a story that somebody had to go to LA. And
Yeah,
it was
so
like
we all decided at one point that we had enough of trying to make it here.
Yeah.
And two of the guys took a Greyhound bus. Rob, at the time, our bass player Rob and Frank, they took a bus because Kevin and I were coming a little bit later. They went to find an apartment and to scope out jobs and stuff and stay with people. So they went a couple weeks before us, and then we all met in Seattle because we got two gigs. We got a gig in Seattle and then we got a gig in Portland, and then we went to LA. So we came with the equipment in a van.
Okay.
It's Kevin and I. So we drove.
How
Kevin
was
and I
that
drove.
conversation at the border trying to come in with that van? And all that
We
equipment?
lied. I think at the time
You have to.
Well, back then it was easier because there was no Facebook, there was no
Sure.
social media, there was no MySpace, there was none of that.
Yeah.
So it was a kind of thing where you would get a letter from a studio, and you would say you're going to record,
Okay.
and they didn't care because you're bringing equipment in to bring business into the U.S. So
Yeah.
that was the
You
way.
weren't taking business. You were bringing business.
Yeah. So now it's not that it's harder now. It's actually easier now because now you just go through whatever the American Musician Guild and
Yeah.
you pay.
Yeah.
And if you have to have a certain amount of gigs, and you have to have if you have a booker that books you, it's just a process now, and it's
Yeah.
not hard to do. It's just costs money.
Yeah. Usually.
Yeah.
That's all.
But we were in, once we got our equipment in, we didn't leave for like a long time. Like, coming in and out was not a luxury that we had.
Yeah.
We left, once we were there, we stayed. And I remember I came back for a wedding, and I had to go back by bus. And I remember my parents drove me across the border in Plattsburgh, and I got on a Greyhound in Plattsburgh. And I was like, okay, I'm good. I'm going to take the Greyhound to New York, and then in New York, I'm going to fly. Because once you're in the States,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. I'll fly to LA. And I remember being on the Greyhound bus, getting onto the bus, my parents were there, and all of a sudden, this U.S. border guard shows up
No way.
at the at the door of the bus. As people were going on, asking, "Are you an American citizen? Are you an American citizen? Are you an American citizen?" And they came to me like, "Are you an American citizen?" I was like, "Yes." And I just
the
got
fact that like no IDs almost, it's so crazy.
Oh no, I mean, it was like pre 9/11,
Yeah.
but you still had to have something.
Yeah.
And I said yes, and they didn't ask her. I just got on the bus, and I remember my mom was there, and I remember I was like tense until I got off the bus and got on the plane, I still thought something was going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, and I would never do something like that. Crazy.
But it's so funny because you think of those stories now, and it's like, everything happens, right, for a reason.
Yeah.
And you guys ended up going to LA, and then you came back, and then whatever you went back to LA, and you were there for how long?
We were there for a year.
Okay, so you guys you stayed for a while.
Yeah. So it took us like about 3 months until we started getting offered deals.
Okay.
And the first 6 months we were there, and then, yeah, we were there for, I mean, we got there. I remember we got there in like middle of 99, I think it was. And I remember I came home for 99, 2000 New Year's. And then we went back and our album came out at the end, almost the end of 2000, like October.
Okay.
But we did OzzFest that. So yeah, we were there like a year before we got a deal.
And what were you thinking? Like, I'm thinking, I had a band, right, at one
Yeah.
point, and I told this to Dom on the past episode of just like, fuck, you always wanted that call, as a
Yeah.
band, like you always wanted to get that call of like, you're signed, you're going to go on this tour. When you were finally playing OzzFest, what were kind of like, I know it's a long time ago, but
Yeah.
I mean, do you still have,
I remember everything.
I was going to say, do you remember like those feelings of like, of excitement? Like,
Oh, fuck yeah. All of it, man. It was just like that. I remember that tour. I remember waking up in the morning and being on site for like the second show. And I remember having I had these Sennheiser. Once we were on Sharon and Ozzy's label, like everybody wanted to sponsor us and help us.
yeah,
It was just like
it's instant.
like, we got did fucking everything. It was like, and so we had a deal with Sennheiser, and I remember I had wireless microphones, and I remember cleaning my microphones, and I was just sitting at the little table in the RV, and it was sunny out, and I would heard the tuning the PA. I think they were tuning it to Pale Shelter, which they usually tune like PAs to Tears for Fears, like stuff that's really well recorded.
Okay.
And I remember just hearing it and going, I've got 33 of these shows left. This is amazing. And just being so happy, sitting there and cleaning my mic, getting all the gunk off and just putting it back together and just being like, this is like a dream come true. And I also remember getting a knock on the RV door, and it was Gloria Cavalera. And she comes to whoever answered the door and said, is Jason there? And I came out and I go, hi. And she goes, hi, I wanted to know, Max heard you guys, and there's a song on the Soulfly record called Pain, and Grady from Willhaven does a part, and Chino from Deftones does a part, and he wants to play it live. Would you be into coming on stage and doing that with him every day?
Every day. Wow. Dude.
And I remember going on the bus and on his bus and meeting him and sitting, and he had like his band was there, and they had little like congas, and he was just like doing the song like acoustic. Let's go over the song. And he's like, speak up, you know what is up, go to silence, who fed you up? And I was just like, that's fucking Max Cavalera that's fucking doing this song on this new record that's coming out.
That's
and
amazing.
He's showing me the song, and he's telling me what my part's going to be live. And I remember we did OzzFest with Soulfly, and then we went across the States in the fall with Soulfly.
How long was the tour? How long were you on tour with them?
OzzFest was 2 months, or it was like 34 dates, and then
Wow.
we did another 35 dates with Soulfly across the U.S.
Wow, man.
And I went up I did that song with him like 70 times. It was just the best, man.
So you go through this whole run of like 60 something gigs, of like this fucking insanity of like you go from this Montreal band that ships up, goes to LA, kind of becomes the rock and roll dream in a sense, where you left, fuck everything, let's go to LA, let's do this. It ends up happening, and then at a certain point, I remember you left the band. I think it was like, was that after? Like,
oh yeah.
I don't know if you want to go into it, but what happened?
Talking about anything, man. It just kind of, I had a kid. My girlfriend was pregnant with Nathan, my son. And I knew that I didn't want to be that guy that was on the road with kids.
Mm-hmm.
I'd seen friends of mine and other band members that have had kids and tried to be dads. And I just was like, I want to be there for my kid, and especially me, the way my childhood was. My dad, my dad was always working. Like I mentioned before, he was working a lot. And I kind of felt lost when I was a kid, and I never wanted a kid that I brought into the world to feel that way. I wanted him to feel like, I was there for him. So
that was present.
Yes, that was a decision I made, and I don't regret it at all, because it opened up the doors to all the other things that I ended up doing. But yeah, it was really after, and again, music beats you down. Like there's disappointment.
I was gonna say, was there certain things
Oh,
that happened
man.
that also started?
Oh, yeah, there were
it
great
weighs
things.
down on you, man.
It's just it's like a grind, right? Like because you're never really enjoying anything. You're always thinking about what the next thing is, and
Did you feel like you were at the mercy at a certain point where you felt like you were even changing who you were to stay in that? Like, because
No.
I've heard that from a few people. It's like at a certain point, like they were on this road,
Yeah.
and then they were so afraid of losing that all of a sudden they
No.
started changing themselves to adapt to anything just to stay.
If anything, we were the opposite. We would never change who we were for the music. We would change the music for who we were.
Okay.
To the detriment of our fan base sometimes. Like we had one record, Inches from the Main Line, which is super fucking heavy, and I'm just screaming. And then Metaphor, the next record, were like super melodic, and I was singing, and which I prefer as a record, but fucking people didn't. They were like, "What the fuck is this pussy
How'd
shit?"
you feel?
You know?
How'd you feel? Like now,
I
never had the opportunity to have an album that people loved, and then a second
I've had
one
the
that people
opportunity
hated.
to have the album people hate
that's what I'm
over and
saying.
over and over and over and over again. So
how do you feel on that?
I don't care. I've never cared.
It didn't bother
I
you?
could give a fuck, man. And I'm still like that when it comes to anything I create.
That took me a long time to feel
Yeah, I
like
don't
that. To
care.
be honest,
I don't
younger, I would be thinking of what people would think about what
Yeah,
I would create,
I mean,
and
it's-
now I don't give a fuck.
It's
but younger was
disappointing
tough.
for your ego.
Yeah.
I remember when our album came out and being in Tower Records in New York City. And I remember my uncle lived in New York, and I was at Tower Records with him, and I was looking for, I think it was Metal Edge or Metal Hammer, one of those metal magazines that had the
Metal insert
yeah,
other word.
right. I think it was Metal Edge, and they were reviewing our record, and I remember opening it up, and where I was going to read the review. It's like, oh, let's find a copy of Metal Edge. So I remember going in Tower Records, and my uncle was with me, and I was, I think, another band member, and I opened up, and I read the review, and they just killed it. And I remember my uncle just going, well, at least you can go work for your dad in trucking.
It's so crazy, the line.
It's just like-
old school shit.
Yeah.
They say lines that are like the worst thing you ever would want to tell. Like you would never say that nowadays, to your son, like, hey, fuck your dream.
Yeah, well, it's like, well, at least you, well, fuck that, and,
Yeah.
you weren't that good at it anyways, or something like that.
Yeah, they pull these crazy lines on
Yeah.
it.
So, I mean, I was used to, I know what it's like to have, like anything, when you put yourself out there to do anything in the public eye, you're going to get criticism. You're going to get people that don't like you, and you got to have thick skin. And so I've kind of known that for a long time. But our benchmark for music in terms of how we created it and the reasons we created it it was Faith No More.
Yeah,
Faith
you're
No More,
a huge fan.
Huge. And for me, Faith No More were the benchmark of doing what you want to do as a band and not caring about what other people think.
Yeah.
And man, I mean, they were like, they had
Epic albums and
their record, the From Out of Nowhere, not From Out of Nowhere. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm blanking on that. But their even the third album, like they put out Introduce Yourself, which was like their first major release, and it did okay. And then they lose their singer, and then they put out The Real Thing with Mike Patton, who'd been in the band for maybe 3 weeks, and he wrote all the lyrics. And then the shift from The Real Thing, which had Epic and that album, I think it was 18 months that they were out working that record. And the label was about to call it quits before Epic broke.
wow. Okay.
And then
I didn't know that.
they were just huge after that. And then they went and recorded Angel Dust, and no one understood. I mean, even me, I remember buying Angel Dust and going, "What the fuck is
what
this?"
happened?
But loving it after like a couple of weeks. But at first, going, "What is this?"
Yeah.
And every record they put out, you never knew where they were going to go. And I love that about them.
I was gonna say, was that because I when I listened back, because I hadn't listened to Some Slaves All Dope in a long time, so I was just listening back to it a bit this week, and I said, you hear the shift in the albums, like from the first one to the second to there's four, if I remember, and you're listening to this kind of this growth, and then there's that break, right, and then another one, and I'm like, it's true, you don't know what to expect because it's like 4 different records. It doesn't sound like the same band.
No, and that's always been kind of the way we would write and operate, and I think if we were to ever make more music, it would probably be the same thing,
Yeah.
And I just think that's the way that band is, and that's just the way that's the DNA of that band. And I think that when a certain project has that DNA in it, then that's what it is. And it's the same thing with Deftones. Like you listen to Deftones, and Deftones weren't afraid to go out on a limb and create and do different things. But why I love Chino from Deftones and what I love about what he does with his side project, like with Crosses. Like, I don't know if you ever heard the Crosses project, but it's amazing.
No.
It's super melodic, and it's a little more electro, and
Okay.
it probably plays more on his passion for stuff like Depeche Mode and The Cure and stuff. And I would imagine, and I just like when a band is who they are. Like AC/DC is AC/DC, and you know what you're going to get with AC/DC.
Yeah, every album you almost get confused as to what year it is.
Right.
But you know it's AC/DC.
But
you can hear the moment the guitar starts, right?
Obviously, it was better with Bon Scott, but that's just an opinion thing, But Led Zeppelin was a great band, another great example of a band that really changed things around. Like their albums, like their later stuff is what I like more. Like for me, everything after 4.
Yeah.
Like Houses of the Holy and
Physical Graffiti
and
Coda
and Presence and all that stuff is what I really like Led Zeppelin more than the blues ripoff stuff.
Yeah.
But I think every band goes through that. And some people are the opposite, where they want to completely be pleasing the fan base all the time. And so much new rock now is formula.
Did you feel at one point in the band that there were people that wanted to do that, and then it was like
no, we were always pretty internally.
Everyone was always on this path.
I think so, from what I remember. Maybe Kevin would remember things differently, but for me, I always remember us being very. When it came to the music, we were always very democratic, and it was always for the better of the song.
Yeah,
it was never a struggle that way. And even when we recorded, like when Kevin and I worked, when we did the last 2 Slaves albums, we worked very well together. It was him and I making all the decisions, and we even co-wrote lyrics together, which I had never done before.
Okay.
And part of it was because I just was getting off my ass and writing them. I fucking hate writing lyrics. Oh my God.
I sucked. My lyric skills, thank God for my singer. He had amazing lyrics. He had,
I can write lyrics. I just didn't want to.
Sucked. I was like, just let me write a guitar riff, please.
Like I like putting things together, and I like I don't know. I'm not I don't really like writing lyrics, but I'm okay at it. Like I've written some good lyrics, but I just don't really like it. It's just a lot of work,
It's crazy because it goes through this whole phase of like, you're going in this music phase, you're doing all this stuff. And then all of a sudden, did CHOM reach out to you? How did that happen?
No,
because there was this whole music career going on. The albums are coming out, tours, now coming back home, maybe more of a family life. And what happened there? Like, how did that whole CHOM experience happen?
The CHOM thing happened because, I've said this story before, Christine Long at CTV was the one who really gave me a shot in media, because I started doing stuff on CTV with Todd Vanderheyden.
Okay.
And that was really the springboard, because through Todd, I met Patrick Charles, and Patrick Charles worked at Virgin. And someone had said that they were looking for an overnight person on Virgin. And I knew Patrick worked there. So I reached out to Patrick. I'm like, he was doing mornings at the time. And I was like, hey, have you heard about this? He goes, yeah, I heard that. Like, speak to Bob Harris. And from what I remember now, Bob Harris was the program director at Virgin at the time.
Okay. You were on Virgin?
No, I wasn't on Virgin. I did a demo to be on Virgin, which fucking makes no sense.
It makes no sense. That's all like, you on Virgin? I don't ever remember hearing that.
Made no sense. So I ended up doing a demo, and it got into the hands of Ray Scott and Danielle Tremblay, who were at CHOM at the time. And they were like, hey, you should come in and read for CHOM. And I was like, oh, CHOM. Yeah, fuck, I remember CHOM. Like CHOM Esprit and Too Tall. And I hadn't listened to CHOM in a long, long time. But, it was the rock station I grew up on. And I came in and read, and they offered me a part-time job on air. It was like that easy, man. And it's crazy when I think about it, because there's people that go to, radio school and go in there and fucking grind out on the street team, just dying to get a shot on air once. And I just wanted to do a job. But it was, it was like, I guess, all the other experience I had from being on stage and knowing music and being authentic. And
I was going to say, how was it? Because now going on stage, you're in this moment, right? You could say whatever the fuck you want. You could swear. You could do it.
Oh, I was terrified
of
swearing.
I was going to say, man.
Oh, I was terrified.
How was your first, getting ready for that first show, knowing that
it was
you could
really
be on
scary.
for,
I remember I trained with this guy named Fernando Gelso, really nice guy, and he trained me on the board and everything. And I remember the first night I asked Ray Scott, who was the PD at the time, or music director at the time. I asked him, can Fernando stay overnight with me?
Please don't leave me alone.
Please don't leave me alone. I was petrified. And I remember he stayed with me for my first shift. And he just, and like, it was like, I would hit a commercial and I was trying to operate everything like not manual. And I was just doing everything. Every time I would do a mix to a song, and then I would do a break, and I would just be like, I was just like, whoa.
Like a mini heart attack every time.
Every time.
And how,
and the swearing. Like I swear a lot in real
Me
life,
too. I can't stop
like
swearing.
crazy. And I try not to swear too much especially when I do stuff like this. And but I was so terrified that I was going to say fuck, and I'd have dreams that I'd swear on air. And I never did. I never swore on air.
You never swore on
No,
air?
never swore on air. I had other people that did.
Okay.
Fucking Carlo from the Nils came in, and he would just swear all the time. And I remember they were about to play, and it was a big deal that we got him on the show. And like, you know, I really had a lot of respect for the Nils. And my friend, John Kastner, who managed at the time, I think he still manages the Nils. He manages a bunch of bands. He's an old buddy. He was in the Doughboys, and it's like, can you get Carlo and the Nils on the show, please? And I'm like, yeah, man. We got their song played and everything, and he comes on, and I'm like, dude, right before we go on air, I go, dude, whatever you do, don't swear. Please don't swear.
He's probably
like,
aching to swear.
Okay, I won't. I promise I won't. All right, here we are with live on CHOM, and we've got Carlos from the Nils here. Carlos and the rest of the band. So good to see you. Like, oh man, Jason, we're so fucking happy to be here. And I was like, you
fucking piece of shit. I fucking don't.
Christ. I'm just like, and right there I was like, oh man. But it wasn't me.
Yeah, as long as it wasn't you. There.
Well, I think the worst thing I did on radio was we used to do these things called Full Moon Fever. You probably remember. CHOM would do, when there would be a full moon, we'd have special programming around it. And we did one called Under the Raging Moon.
Okay.
And we decided to have all angry music on. Angry stuff like Rage Against the Machine. And Picard put on Cop Killer from Body Count.
Oh, shit.
And if you've ever listened to the intro from Cop Killer, it's really brutal.
Okay, I'm gonna get a sound clip. I'll put
it up if you can. It's bad. And someone was listening with their kid, and we got a complaint from the CTRC. And it was just like, and I was like, I thought my job was done, right?
Yeah.
They were like, no, he's like, no, I'm going to take the blame for it. Like I should have known. And we didn't have anything edited. Like when we played Killing a Name, it's like all the fucking 1,000 fuck you, I won't do what you tell me's at the end. And yeah, but it was fun. It was fun. But Cop Killer was like, that was really bad to play Cop Killer on air. It was like fucking crazy.
It's crazy because you have to kind of like control that part of you, because you know that you can easily fall into that. But to remember, and for 5 hours, you were doing it like 5 hours a night. So
I remember I used to say that if I ever got wind that I was getting let go, that I would put a broom handle through the door, and I would just play Rain and Blood by Slayer over and over again until they cut the power somewhere.
This is why they don't give people advance notices.
I think so. I would never.
No, I know.
But I remember making that joke, like, you know, I used to say, yeah, I'm going to play like Slayer, Rain and Blood, like over and over. And then I'll go right into some Cannibal Corpse and
just rip the fucking the station.
Just play like metal, you know, but you know, I never did that. I never swore on air.
No, in fact, you went the complete opposite.
Yeah.
You put out such a great message.
I try to always have good.
Yeah.
Well, and even when I got let go, I mean, I was surprised like anything. You're surprised when you're let go of any place, you know? And it's exactly the cliche everyone says to you. Like, man, it's going to come out of nowhere. You're not going to, and I was like, yeah, what are you sure? And then it did. It was like, whoa. But because of me going back to that, 14-year-old kid who told the principal to go fuck herself. I didn't do that, but I had that little bit of, I'm on to a new journey. Like this is going to be, this is what it is.
This is what it meant.
This is the decision that's been made. This is the path that I've been put on. And I remember, that morning, Julia was really upset because she had been let go like 6-7 years ago, and she had heard before. And then, and of course, subsequently, after leaving, she ended up starting her own thing and killed it. Like is killing it, like killing it. Like she's just killing it now.
It's amazing.
And I remember I said, I've got to address this because the word's going to get around. People are going to. So I went and I did.
Yeah, and you want to control the narrative too. Like
and I just wanted to. So I put a message out saying, I wasn't there anymore, and it was like 3 hours after I got let go, but I wanted to keep it positive, and I didn't want the narrative to I didn't want it to run away with itself and have all these people say this and that. And because sometimes when you don't say anything, that's when people come in and write the narrative for you. And the truth is that I have no ill will towards CHOM. Like I love CHOM. I was listening to Jay and Sharon on the way over here. Like I like radio, and
Me too.
I like radio. I want to cheer for my friends that are still at radio. I think radio is changing drastically. I think it's going to change even more. Do I think the glory days of radio are behind them? I mean, like anything, it's just change, you
Yeah.
know. But I have nothing but respect and love for everybody there. Like, you know, my boss, when you know Matthew. I mean, like when
Yeah.
Matthew's a nice guy.
Yeah, there's,
He's a great guy. And,
I used to love coming down to the radio station.
Yeah.
I used to come and meet everybody from, talk with everybody from TSN, from
Yeah. And
CHOM, from
man,
Virgin. I
like,
had a blast.
The week after I was let go, I had to come in and talk about Comic-Con. I had to come into the station, you know?
How was it coming into the
It
station?
was
now?
weird. It was like a week after I got
It's
let
like your
go.
ex-girlfriend scenario.
Yeah, and then after, and I did it, I had to do it again for something else, and then I was like, okay, this is like, you know, I need a bit of space, but no, I don't. I remember when Julia was let go, she was asked to help for the broadcast at Christmas at Terry's to help run a couple of the microphones. So she had a background in tech too, and she had been let go the day before, and she still showed up and did that because she had been committed to it. So I think sometimes when those situations happen, it's best to rip the Band-Aid off and not. It's just life, man. Like there's changes, you know, and also it's a small industry, and I've seen other people that were in that situation not go that route.
Yeah, and it doesn't help them.
No, and I've seen, and I don't, you know, and they know who they are, and they know, and it's like, listen, it's ego, right? And when your ego's bruised and your ego's
It's a very fragile moment.
Yeah.
And people can do things and say things that they don't really mean.
Right.
But they're in that moment.
and then you're
emotions
and
take
then you're
over.
stuck with that. And the reality is that if you want to work in this industry, and I do want to continue to do stuff, you can't go around and bash people.
No.
And whatever your personal feelings are, you got to remember that it's never personal, it's business. And the reality is that media landscape's changing. Less and less advertising dollars are going. I mean, you know, you work in sales. I mean, fuck. Less people are spending on certain places. It's just the way the world is.
Yeah,
And
the money is there. It's just that it's shifting.
it's shifting, and you got to shift with it.
Exactly.
And like, you know, like the change from going to music into media, and now media into probably more online, and maybe even more behind the scenes, and developing new talent. Like I like working in a creative space, you know?
Well, I see that because right now, like when I look at you, you're working, you have the Power Hour now. You're working with Comic-Con, which is growing every year. I remember you used to work with Cliff and Alex and all those guys because that's how we kind of really got to know each other, was through Comic-Con.
And you know, and I still work with them every day. Like I booked my first.
They're such great guys.
They're great.
I fucking love those guys.
I booked my first 2 guests. I've never booked a guest before.
Okay.
I've helped get some guests, but I've never booked a guest. And I booked my first 2 guests.
I saw it was
Patrick Curral and Annick Jean for Quebec Comic Con. And I was so happy, and they were happy because we've been trying to get Pat to come to the show forever. Like we always were like, you know,
he's like English or French.
Yeah.
Everyone knows exactly what Patrick Huard is,
And he's an
he has
icon.
great movies, like
Great movies, great guy.
Yeah.
I met him for the first time. He came to Montreal Comic Con with Annick, and Annick and I are friends. We've worked together on some stuff, but I never met Pat. And it was this ongoing joke. Like I spent almost a month with Annick in her house working. She had brought me on board to help her with her album Lost Souls.
Okay.
To help her with the English lyrics, to help maybe massage them a bit, just make sure that, you know, all the pronunciations and stuff were right. And it was a great experience. I loved working with her, and we stayed friends. And the joke was, when am I going to meet your fucking husband? Like, he's never here.
Is he real?
And it was like she worked in her studio was at home, and I never got to meet him. And finally, it was like, man, I went to one of her movie premieres, and like I didn't meet him, and like it was just like, okay, I'm not meant to meet this guy. You know, it's never going to happen. And she came to Comic-Con a couple of times with her son. And then this year she's like, I'm going to bring Pat to Comic-Con. We're going to come, but we want to come early. And like, you know, like just, you know, like he's a big star. And like the last thing you want is to get harassed and stuff. So they came a little bit early, and I walked around the hall with him, and he was just amazing. Like I loved his vibe.
He seems like a chill vibe.
He's
like
just such a good guy.
I don't know, you know, sometimes you look at a character on a movie, like whatever, you don't know but he always gave off that vibe. Like
he's just one of those guys that gets it, and her too. Like they're just nice people. And so I was like, was walking with him backstage, and they were going to see the Jamie Campbell Bower panel, the guy who played Vecna on Stranger Things.
Okay.
And their son's a big fan of Stranger Things. And I was talking with him, and I was just saying, like, you know, you should really come to Quebec Comic Con. He's like, oh yeah. And it's like, you know, I was asked a while back, and I just don't know who would be the right person to talk to about that. And I'm like, me.
I am Comic-Con.
I go, I'm part of the team. Like,
yeah.
So this year we put an offer out, and they accepted, and I was so proud of that. So, you know,
How did that whole Comic-Con thing start though? Because I know you're a huge fan.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
A huge fan. Like
I
you
started-
painted up literally half
Yeah.
of your body is
I got
Marvel.
a lot of superheroes and stuff. And,
Exactly. So I know you're a huge fan, but how did that start? The whole relationship with them, with Cliff and Alex and all those guys.
well, I was going to Fan Expo in Toronto
Okay.
from like 2004 when Slaves on Dope broke up or ended, or when I left. I went and got a regular job at a mall and stuff. And I remember I went back to collecting comics because I was like able to go to the comic store. And I remember I went to this local comic store in Villemard.
Oh, what was the name of it?
Oh, I can't remember. It was on Allard.
Yeah. I think
My friend Sebastien and Joey owned it. These two guys.
I used to go to
I don't know
Million
if it was
Comics all
called-
the time.
Yeah, but it was like,
when
you
the East
remember,
End-
it was like, and it was a really cool little store. I can't remember what
Yeah.
it's called.
Okay.
I don't remember, but I used to go there every week and get my reserves and chat. And they went to Fan Expo, and I'd never been to Fan Expo, so I went to Fan Expo with them.
Okay.
In 2004, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. So when Montreal had their first Comic-Con, I went and I was freelancing for Hour magazine. I was just doing articles for them, and I said, "Can I go to the Comic-Con and write an article about it?" They're like, "Yeah, sure." And I went, and I got a media accreditation, and I remember I took the guests were the Honky Tonk Man, Jeremy Bullock,
That's amazing. Honky Tonk guy. I used to
Jeremy
love the
Bullock,
Honky Tonk.
and Lou Ferrigno. And I remember I took all of them to dinner, and
Lou Ferrigno must have been expensive.
I took them all. I took them all to Moishes.
The guy's huge.
We all of us went to Moishes, and I remember that was just so cool, and it was just a great experience. And I remember the year after that, I got the job at CHOM. So,
Okay.
and then Todd Vanderhayden, who I was doing
Yeah,
stuff
he
with,
was
CT,
huge,
he's a
yeah, he
big
was a
comic book
huge
guy.
fan.
So we started talking about Comic-Con more on the show, and then the Martin Spalding was at Bell, and we started having meetings with Martin and Comic-Con, and then it just became this thing and then Cliff came on board, and then it just became this thing where
So Martin Spalding was part of a lot of the stuff with Comic Con. I didn't know
well,
that.
he was part of not with Comic-Con, he was part of us doing the media buys with Bell.
Okay, yeah, because I remember he was pretty much on all the radio stations. He was overlooking all the radio stations.
Yeah, and
as
Martin-
a program, not director, but I think
He was like the director,
general manager or
general
something
manager,
like that. Yeah.
GM. But Martin also, I remember he was there for our first couple of meetings because I would go to Martin and go, they want to advertise. Like, what do we do? And he'd be like, and that was when we were still on Fort and it was a little smaller. So,
Yeah.
but it was just cool to see it all grow. And then at one point they're like, we got to give you a title or do something. I'm like, why don't I become the spokesperson? Because I would be on remote at the show, doing interviews, and they would use the interviews, and it would be like, let me be your guy.
Yeah.
And I'll do interviews for you guys, and then you'll have content. And that's what ended up. It just became the spokesperson. And then, they added Ottawa, and then they added all the shows. So now, I do Montreal, Ottawa, Quebec, and Winnipeg. And, every show is just growing.
Yeah, it's crazy. I remember when I think my first time I worked with Cliff and Alex was like 2015-ish. And looking at what it was.
Was that when we were at Place Bonaventure?
Yes.
Because there was the year we went from Place Bonaventure, and we had 4,000 people waiting outside, and it was just a disaster.
Yeah.
Not a disaster, but it was like a growth year. And then the next year we went to Palais. And
I think it was that. I remember I think it was that year, but I remember just seeing the growth of just the event. Like, and you just saw it even in people's faces. I remember you would see like that first time of the weekend, like it was jammed, there's people dressed up, right?
Yeah.
And now you look at it now, this is like a real, it's a real event in the city. When it
Oh,
comes,
yeah,
it's real. It's huge, man.
It's
and
huge.
it gets bigger and bigger every single year. And I was so happy like seeing all that stuff, and you guys it keeps growing, and you get amazing guests showing up every single year.
Like we just announced a bunch of guests for Winnipeg as well. Like Sam Raimi and Ted Raimi are coming. Robert Patrick's coming to Winnipeg.
Yeah, so
and
can't see Robert Patrick, I think, in T1000.
me too, man. He's amazing. And he's Richard's brother from Filter.
It's true.
Yeah, so it's
Oh
crazy.
fuck!
Yeah.
I never put that together.
Yeah, the two of them. So it's man, it's weird the way those things work, and I'm just grateful to be a part of cool things like that.
Yeah.
And that team's great. My wife came into that team, and she runs she's like the director of comms for the shows and stuff, and it's just it's funny because people think, oh, Comic-Con is just like huge, like corporation. It's like 8 people.
Yeah, it's crazy.
There's 6 full-time, 8 people that just hustle.
Yeah, it was like there was 4 people I think at the time.
Yeah.
There was Cliff, Alex,
Oscar and Liz.
Yeah, Liz.
Yeah,
I
Liz
remember
is there, and now they partnered with Cape Flow, who are Dan and Scott, who are operations guys. Like Scott's our, he takes care of like everything operations. Like, and he's like a whiz. Like it's funny because I went to Comic-Con obviously, and then I went to another show, and I saw how they lay the floor plan out.
Yeah.
Compared to the way we run it, and I was like, holy shit! It takes a good operations person to make a floor plan, and there's just what I love about that team is that everybody respects what everybody does.
Yeah.
And everybody works together. And everybody leaves each other the fuck alone. Like, you're good at that. Like,
do your thing. Bring your best to the table.
Yeah, man. And it's great to have teams like that. And, you know, egos, like in anything, there's egos in everything, but very limited ego flare-ups in that team. It's pretty cool.
That's awesome. And now, so what? Now you did, there's a bunch of stuff. Like I said, you're always doing something. So there's Power Hour, there's Comic-Con. There's also this Twitch. Is this something that was a one-off or with the Habs, or is this something?
I don't know. I mean, you know, I've done work with them in the past, you know, which like I've done some stuff with them in the past, and they've approached me to host some stuff once in a while, and I think you know,
it's starting to get a little more.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, you never know what can happen. I love the idea. Like I said, I love the idea of working with them, and the guy I was co-hosting with, Kevin Raphael, is like a pretty well-known sports commentator and like Francophone personality. So it was really cool to do something. You know, I love the idea of working, and like I'm not moving to Toronto.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to Toronto.
Yeah.
I'm not fucking moving. You know, the only place I would ever maybe go to would be California. If I was going to make a move, it would be to California.
Yeah.
But even that would be just a seasonal move. Like, it's something that both Julia and I have talked about doing.
Why California more than anything?
Just because I have so many roots there. Like,
okay.
I have so many good friends there, and I would want to be like, I could really see myself January, February, March going there.
I think most Montrealers.
Yeah. But like, you know, some people think about going to Florida. Like, I'd love to be in California and find a way to do my work there and just be away from the winter.
Yeah.
But in terms of, that's the only move I ever foresee. But Montreal is my place, and I love the idea of being able to work in French.
Yeah.
I try as hard as I can to get better and better, and I speak French pretty well, and I love the idea of collaborating with people on the French side and doing more of that, and the idea of working bilingually. Like, I'm not anywhere in a position where I would be able to broadcast in French, but I can collaborate in French, and I can come on and be a commentator, and my biggest challenge every year is being when I'm the spokesperson for Quebec Comic-Con, because I do all my interviews in French. And but I hosted a panel this year at Comic-Con with Sophie Nélis, who's in Yellow Jackets.
Okay.
And she's from here, and she did her first Comic-Con. And, you know, we're at Montreal Comic-Con, and most of the panels are in English. And I was like, "Ça tente-tu de le faire en français?" And she's like, "Ben oui." And we just did it in French. And I didn't even think twice. I was like, let's do it. And I'm hosting Annick and Pat and Annick's panel in Quebec City, and I'm going to host it in French. And I just got to fucking, you know, you just got to grab your nuts and go, man. It's like, let's go.
I realize, like, usually in those types of moments, you're like, I'm not going to be perfect. But I think that's what people actually enjoy more. That's what, when I was younger, I used to be really afraid.
Yeah.
And like, my girlfriend's French, right? Like, she speaks French to me, I speak English to her, and we go back and forth. And I used to be so like terrified of changing into language. I'm like, man, I'm going to sound like a fucking idiot. My verbs are going to sound like shit.
And I still,
and my tablet, why is it feminine when like, I don't understand, you know, and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden you're just like at a certain point, like, there is a whole other world. If you don't kind of at least start opening up that door. There's a whole other world that's established, that's amazing over here.
Yeah.
And I find at times like we do that where we kind of stick to what we know, which is English. We stick to
it's funny how that is, and I'm fortunate that, you know, my wife is Francophone, and I'm very open to everything that goes on here, and I'm really into Francophone music. Like, there's a lot of new up and coming bands that I listen to regularly. There's a whole wave of like alternative French bands that I listen to all the time. Like, there's a festival I go to every year called FMR, Festival Musique Émergente. Okay. And it's in Rouyn-Noranda. And I go every year.
Wasn't it just in August, right?
Just in, it's always Labor Day weekend,
Okay. I think my Astral Gates was actually playing on this one.
No, they weren't. I wouldn't know. They weren't up there. Okay, but they, I mean, listen, there's a lot of music festivals that happen in Quebec over the summer. But up in northern Quebec, you know, that festival is like one of my faves, and I've discovered so many great bands. And this year I saw an artist that I've followed for the last like couple of years now called Lumiere.
Okay.
And he's the drummer of this band called Bon Enfant that I love. And it's just, there's this whole scene, you know, like
Yeah.
there's there's this band called Chose Sauvage that I really like. And they've got a side project called La Sécurité, and they're actually playing Saturday night at Pop. And I'm very much still passionate about what's going on. And I'm lucky because I've got kids that are into music, and my daughter's really into music. My daughter turns me on to all this new music, and we discover music together. And she'll, you know, she told me about Phoebe Bridgers and then about Boy Genius, which is a project they have. And then we went to Toronto to go see it together. And it's just fun to have kids that are into music.
Yeah.
And have them point you in direction and go, you should really check this out. So this province is great for creativity, as you know.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a money place. It's a creative place. So that's why I think I fit.
Yeah, and it kind of like the 90s in a sense where there is no boundaries here.
No,
like you could pretty much try anything
Yeah.
and feel okay to try it. Like there's certain scenes I think that Montreal vibe would not work there because it's a little more.
Yeah.
And I find I always felt that about this city where you never really feel like closed off. You can try something. You can try anything you want here.
Yeah, and I I'll go to Toronto and I listen. I used to really rag on Toronto and hate Toronto.
No,
and
I love Toronto, to be honest.
I wouldn't go as far as loving Toronto.
I love
but
it.
I have a lot of good friends in Toronto.
Yeah.
You know, I've got some really close friends that live in Ontario. I've got certain routines for Toronto now. Like, you know, if I go to Fan Expo, I like to fly into Porter on the island, and I like to stay at the Royal York, and I like to be around there. And like there's certain, you know, when I go to Toronto, I have a good time. And now I know, like Budweiser stage. I don't know if you've ever seen a show there, but
No.
it's an amphitheater outside, and it's so much fun. I went to 2 shows there this year. I went to Boy Genius, and then I went to Rob Zombie, Alice Cooper, Ministry, and Filter.
Oh shit.
Right at the end of the summer, and that was
Wow.
so much fun. And you know, I've got a whole routine now when I go. Like I'll drive there, I'll stay in Port Hope, which is an hour outside, and then I'll drive to the show and then come back and stay in Port Hope again on the way home because it's less expensive than staying in Toronto and it's nicer. But I don't now if a band's coming to Toronto and they're not playing Montreal and I really want to see them, like I'll go now.
Yeah.
You know, before when I was working at CHOM, there's a lot of times like.
You just couldn't go. Like
ABC. Like I love that band ABC. I don't know if you remember them from the 80s.
No.
They had that song The Look of Love
and
they were just like an 80s band from England that were really, really cool, and they never come to Canada, and they played Toronto at the Elma Combo because the Elma Combo's redone itself, and they did 2 nights at the Elma Combo, and it's just a small place, and I didn't go, and I regret it so much because I don't know if they'll come back to North America, you know. So now when I have a chance to go do something, I'm going to go do it.
Well, no, like, look, obviously the CHOM days are past you now. There's a bunch of stuff on the plate. What are you kind of like excited about now? Like, are there certain projects that I know there's Power Hour, like I said, you've said a few times.
Like Rockman Power Hour is a weekly thing, semi-weekly. You know, we do it all. We at least put three episodes out a month, and that's always I'm gonna do that as long as I can. Like that's there's no expiry date on that. Everything else is subject to who I'm working with. You know? But right now, the work I'm doing with Comic-Con is pretty regular, you know, like that's pretty, and there's chances that I might join the team to do stuff behind the scenes a bit more, you know, and the rest is like, who knows, you know, like
Is this kind of an exciting?
It is. It's exciting and it's nerve wracking.
Yeah, I could imagine
because you know, like you get like when you're, you know, when you leave, like I was fortunate enough when I left Bell that I had a bit of time to think. Like I have a bit of time to think of what I want to do, but there's one thing to get a paycheck every week and know you're going to get that for a little while. And then the part of you that's like, well, you're not working every day, so you're a loser. It's like, no, you're fine. Like you're just having time to like I had a lot of people, a lot of people gave me advice after.
Yeah.
And some of the best advice I got was take your time and don't rush into anything. Like, you know, but I planted a lot of seeds when I left. And I still am. And I've got a lot of people that are still talking to me. And one thing I did discover though, I'm not made for LinkedIn.
I know, I saw the post.
Like just makes no sense to me.
Dude, What
is LinkedIn?
LinkedIn, man.
Like it's like people explain to me, well, it's a great place to grow your network. Well, I don't need to grow mine. I've got a good network.
Your network's pretty good.
All that LinkedIn does is make me feel bad that I don't have a formal education. Because everybody, like I go on LinkedIn and I look through at LinkedIn on jobs and I'm like, I look at jobs that I know that I'm qualified to do.
Yeah. But you feel like a fucking idiot reading the description.
Because I know that if I was to send in,
No.
like, do you have a bachelor's degree? No.
No.
Did you graduate CJEP? No, I actually fucking left CJEP.
I told my high school teacher to go fuck herself.
Right. You know what I mean? But I'm pretty sure I could do this job.
Yeah.
But it's just a weird thing. So, you know,
And
sometimes
everyone
you
is just like barfing some fucking bullshit thing
Yeah.
that you know they don't mean. I'm
yeah,
like,
it's
come on,
like,
man.
I mean, listen, and I remember when I posted this, of course, people were like, whoa, what's wrong with LinkedIn? I got jobs there. And I'm like, that's cool. Like, it's just, you know, it just doesn't, it's not, I guess it's not on brand for me.
No, but I feel you. I feel like if you have a creative side, it doesn't feel very like an open.
It seems very corporate.
It is very corporate.
And, you know, corporate, there's nothing wrong. I'm a firm believer. Actually, I'm a very firm believer in corporate and creative can work very well together hand in hand if you have the right people
100%
at the table.
The people leading the charge on the corporate side,
Have
if
to be
you
creative.
they have to have some sort of
Have
creativity
to have
in
some
them.
creatives there. And whenever you have a corporate structure that lacks creativity,
You see it.
you see it, you feel it, you feel the lack of humanity, you feel the lack of empathy.
Yep.
You can almost 100% feel that it's male dominated.
Yeah.
Because the energy is just so alpha male, destroy,
100%.
destroy.
Yeah. It's just eat and
Yeah.
consume.
And
Yeah.
it's like, no, I mean, so yeah, LinkedIn's not for me.
Yeah, dude. But I feel you. Like I'll do some posts here and there. I have it, you know, based on jobs, whatever.
Yeah.
But I never. It's not one of those platforms that I'm on.
No.
I don't connect with it
To
well
me,
either.
it's like, you know, I have a background in theater. I love the idea of acting. At one point I had an agent. I was going on auditions.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I was like,
What did you do? Did you end up getting any roles?
no, I got it.
No.
You know, it was this whole thing about like paying dues, right? Like I had to pay my actor dues and all that. And I had to become actor. And,
Yeah.
you know, and that's a process where, you know, I might one day do that. And there's, you know, it's a whole process you got to go through and you got to get, it's the craziest thing where like, you've got to get points.
Yeah.
But in order to get
Accumulate,
points,
like,
you have-
hours
you
and
have to get
points.
points. But the only way to get points is to get an actor job. But the only way to get an actor job is to be out. So it was this like weird thing. And then I remember I got this job, and they were like, "All right, so it's like $400, but you have to pay for the ACTRA license, but you're going to get points for it. But the ACTRA license is $375." I'm like, so I'm going to make $25. Actually, no, because it's going to cost $125 to get this. So it's going to cost. I was like, no. And I remember I went on a couple auditions, and like one was like biker. So I show up and I'm like, I showed up and I'm in a fucking room with like fucking 20 bald bikers with tattoos. Like, what is this?
How awkward is that feeling of sitting in a
Super
room with
weird.
like there's 20 people that kind of remind you of you?
Yeah. And I remember I went and we had to read with two. So it was like high school. Like you got to pair up. And I paired up with this one guy that nobody wanted to pair up with. And then I remember we had to read together. And I remember he was super nervous. And I would read a line, and he would read a line back. And I was like, and at that moment I said, okay, right now I know that there's 5 people looking at me and him and are saying, this is horrible.
Yeah.
But I know that this guy needs me more than I need this job. So I tried to be empathetic to him, and I'd be like, it's okay, man. Like, take your time. But I remember I walked out of there. I'm like, well, at least he felt comfortable.
Yeah, at least I helped one person.
Yeah, because I know I didn't get that job. And it's just, and I remember I got asked to do like 3 auditions in a week or a week and a half, and we were renovating our place.
Okay.
And I said no to all of them. And then I remember the agent dropped me. She's like, I'm just going to have to, and she's a pretty big agent here.
Yeah.
And she was like, I can't work with you if you can't go on auditions. Like, well, I'm just renovating my house. Like, I'm sorry. She said, well, this is just unprofessional. I was like, whatever, you know?
Yeah.
And I felt bad because I'm not someone who usually burns bridges.
Yeah.
Or has bad relations with people and I know that she probably left that exchange feeling like that guy's a dick.
Yeah.
But I'm not. I was just being really honest. Like, I can't go to the audition. Like, I've got fucking some guy showing up to do drywall in my place, and like I'm covered in fucking, like I'm covered in white powder.
You're gonna show up to
You know what I mean? Like, what? Unless this is for like a plasterer, like,
Yeah.
I couldn't. And
talk to me about the role first, and if it fits what I'm wearing
well,
right now.
so the whole thing is like I've always said, I know I could do the job.
Yeah.
Just hire me. But that's like not gonna happen.
Yeah, dude.
So
And I feel the same way. I'm like, I know I could do this job. Do we have to go through this fucking
Yeah,
stupidity?
like, oh, we
you've
gotta- yeah.
seen like everything else that like, do I need to fucking do
yeah,
this?
so that's probably why I'll end up working with somebody that I know or a team that I know already. And the acting thing, like I'll do I'm doing a voice demo now, and I'll probably maybe actively look for voice work more because I've done a lot of it. And but I've got a guy, a friend of mine, Kevin, who's doing a horror movie, and he's cast me already. He's like, "You're in. We're doing it in January." And I'm like, "All right,
Amazing.
that's fun." Like,
How are you feeling like you're gonna be part of like, and you love fucking horror?
I love horror, so and you too. I mean, like, I love all that stuff. So for me to be a part of that, an indie movie, like that's what I want to do. And he's like, "Well, we're gonna get you some money." I'm like, just
get me in.
Just get me a place to stay, and we're good. Like, whatever. If it makes money, like, I don't care about the money. I just want to do it.
Yeah. There's certain projects I always feel like that. Like,
yeah,
there's some of them I'm here for money. Like, pay me, I get it. I like doing the project, whatever, but like, okay, what's the salary or whatever. Yeah. But then there's some projects you don't even have to pay me. Like,
no.
Honestly, I just want to be part of this.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, the secret in life is that do a bunch of stuff and get paid for it, but secretly have it be stuff that you would do for free.
Yeah.
And if you're doing that, then you're winning.
Yeah.
But you can't say that out loud because then someone will say,
because I was going to say, I'm never going to pay you.
Yeah, it's funny because people always, it's a weird one. It was Geneviève Bourne, who used to be at Music Plus. She was the one who told me, listen, don't do stuff for free anymore. Like, don't.
Yeah.
Get paid. Like everybody that's doing, like if you're hosting an event and it's a charity event, get paid because the lighting guy's getting paid and the sound guy's getting paid and the venue's getting paid. And yeah, they're raising money, but your time's valuable. So do something, like get something in exchange. Like you can't do stuff for free. It just devalues you. And it's true because your time is valuable. And like, you kind of train people to how you want to, like you kind of, you set the tone on how you want to be treated.
Yeah. And it's not a question of being, people sometimes they take that in the wrong tone, but I'm like, it's the complete opposite.
It's respect.
It's respect for the person. And I never understood the idea of not, feeling some worth for your time.
Yeah.
And then there's some stuff you do, like whatever, you do them because you want to be there and that's different. But when someone's like, let's say for a guest event or something like that, and you're hosting a whole night, like you're right. Everyone else is getting paid on this gig. Why would I not want to do it?
Because the thing is, you'll do it for free and then someone will be like, oh yeah, I call him, like he'll do it for free. He's a nice guy. And
exactly.
There's being a nice guy and don't get me wrong, there's things that I'll do. Like I'll do all kinds of, charity stuff.
Yeah.
It's not that I won't. The reason why you don't hear me doing about charity stuff is because if you do charity stuff and you do that kind of stuff, I don't want to talk about it. Like there's no need for me to go on social media and say, I did this and I got this award for doing it. It's like, no, I did it because I needed to do it.
Yeah, I just want to do it.
I just do it. So I work a lot. I work a lot in recovery.
Yeah.
I help a lot of people in recovery. And I don't talk about it. And I mean, people know to call me and to message me if they have an issue, and I can try to help them. But there's certain things you don't need to post about.
Yeah.
Certain things that don't need to be part of your fucking feed, And some things, like it's weird, like, but putting a value on your time, it's very hard when you're a creative and you do fun stuff because people think, well, it's fun. Like, why wouldn't you want to do that for free? Well, because I got to eat. I have a mortgage to pay, and my kids are going to school, and all this shit. Like,
No, man, I agree. Like there is that limit of what you want to do, and what you want to do for free. That's cool. That's fine.
Yeah.
But then there's some stuff you just like, dude, I gotta pay a bill. Like it's not a fucking problem. It's not a bad thing. It's like anybody else. They have a job. They get paid.
Yeah.
Dude, Jason, like, man, I think you and I we could talk forever. Like
probably, yeah.
And the next time we do this, we gotta do a cigar. I would have loved to have a cigar.
Yeah,
not in the house. Probably
we gotta set up at a cigar lounge and do this.
Yeah, man. But I just want to say thank you so much for being
here.
man,
like, pleasure. And it was fun. And I, for me, it's like whenever I see my friends starting stuff and doing stuff, I think it's important that you support them too. And again, going back to those people that, like, we didn't even talk about DMC or any of that stuff, but like Daryl McDaniels was the guy that really taught me how to be humble. Like you got a guy who's legend in hip hop. Run DMC were founders of hip hop. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Grammy Award winner, and he did my CJD show, and he flew in to do it on his dime. And we still talk regularly. And when I look at a guy like him, who's always been available and there for me if I needed him, why would I not be there for somebody else if they're asking me?
Well, that was the thing. At first, to be honest, I remember when I was like, I'd love to have Jason on the show. I'd love to hear Jason's story a little more, get in deep there, like what he's up to, all that stuff. I was like, man, I don't know if Jason's going to come.
Yeah, of course.
No, but in my mind, I was like, but Jason, like, he's fucking... Dude, to me, you're like one of the voices of Montreal. That's the way I see you, you know?
Thanks.
And so I was like, oh, I don't know if he's going to come on a show that's just starting off. Like,
Well,
yeah,
I think it's important. I mean, for me, it's not. Again, I don't. It goes back to the same thing. Like I'm not. I'm not always there. You can't always be there for the glory and for the, because it's not about that. It's about having time and spending time and you know, I think conversations and having the time to explain things, and if someone's interested enough to ask you about your life, like why would you say no? You know?
yeah, I would
And don't get me
assume
wrong.
yeah.
There's people that reach out to me to do podcasts where I'm like, I don't have time.
Yeah.
Because and it's not. It's. I think sometimes you just, if it feels right, you do it, and that's what, you know. You can't do everything.
Yeah.
But also you can't always say no to
Yeah.
things just because you want it. Like,
But it wasn't even like a question, dude. I literally texted you.
yeah,
You
but I saw what
responded
you were
back.
doing, and I saw you were doing stuff, and I was like, fuck. And also, I like you. You know, if I didn't like you, I'd be like,
Thanks,
you know, if there's some people that would say, you know, they'll be like, oh, we don't come on my podcast. I'm like, I don't even like you. Like, why would I want to spend an hour with you? But then again, I might do something like that with someone who I don't particularly think I like, and then end up really liking them. So, you never know what life's gonna throw your way, and yeah, no, it's fun, man. I love talking, and I love podcasts. I like, and my
Yeah.
podcast, even my podcast is very restrictive in the sense that it's very interview based. It's, you know, there's been times where people are like, why don't you guys just go on there and talk? And like, because I'm like, well, no one's want to just listen to me and Ryan talk. But then there's people like, no, they would, like,
Yeah.
try it. Like, Twitch streamers talk for hours and they have tons of people. And I'm like, I don't know. I think sometimes you figure out what you think you're good at, and you do
Yeah.
it. And you're obviously clearly good at this, so do it. You know.
No, I honestly, like I said, man, it was great to see you again. One, learn more about you, because like I know you, but I didn't know all this other stuff.
Oh, there's
behind it.
more to know, dude.
Dude, that's how we could do like a multi-series here.
Yeah.
I feel like we scratched the surface almost
Yeah.
on certain conversations. We didn't even talk about, you know, sobriety. We didn't talk about any of that, which maybe in the future, hopefully one day, I'd love to have you back.
Yeah, man, for
and
sure.
we dig in a little deeper. But dude, honestly, I appreciate you coming on. Of
course, 100%.
I'm wishing you only the best. Like, you were one of the best guys there at the station.
Thank you, man.
And
Thank you.
and I loved coming down and just coming to CHOM. CHOM, I grew up same thing. Like,
Yeah, I listen. People would show up at CHOM with their parents. My friend Ashley, who works, she works at Verdun Hospital in the MRI department, and her dad, Jim, was a huge CHOM fan, and he ended up coming to visit the station. And she was like, "My dad loves CHOM," and I'm like, "Well, tell him to come one time when I'm on
Yeah.
air." And I remember, like, people would come in and they'd just be freaking out. They'd look around, holy shit, this is CHOM. And they, you know, I'd say, oh, you know, sit behind the console, take a picture with the headphones and all that.
Yeah.
And they love that.
I
And,
know.
like,
I used to do that at CTV to all the
Right,
people they used
of
to come. I
course.
used to bring them into the studio.
oh man, sit at the desk.
at
I have a
desk.
picture of me and my brother at the desk. You know,
Everyone,
like,
the moment
it's
they
the
come
best.
in, right away they want
so
to go
much
to bed.
fun. Like, why would you not?
And that's what it was. But you made people feel like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, because that's sometimes like the people from the outside perspective, like the sales side or whatever. But you were one of the on air personalities,
Man,
and you made that feel.
I remember the first night I came into CHOM when I was on air. I was working. I walked through the door, and there was someone on air who's not there anymore, and she was hosting her show. And I opened the door and I said hi, and she looked at me and she goes, "Who are you? Why are you in here?" And I was like, "Oh, you're nice."
Thank you.
And I was like, "Well, I'm Jason. I'm the new overnight guy." She goes, "Oh, okay, sorry." She goes, "Because, like, you know, I'm in here all alone, and like, when strange people come into the studio," and I was just like,
I get it. But
I get it, but like, and I
Not so
remember,
harsh.
I remember saying to myself, "Well, I'm never going to do that when
Yeah.
someone comes to the studio. I'm never going to look at somebody like they're, you know, purple."
Dude, I remember my first time that I walked into CTV.
Yeah.
And I sat there and Mitsumi Takahashi just like, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, this is fucking like Mitsumi Takahashi is like I watched her for like
Yeah.
ever on TV, and she was so nice. She just.
Yeah.
Her and Paul Kowalski, I remember they were.
Paul's the best.
Paul,
And so's Mitsumi. Paul's great.
Yeah, Paul and Mitz were great, and I remember, and she's like, "Come," and she's like, "Come behind," and I'm sitting next to her, and she's like, "Oh, this is where we read the news," you know, this
Yeah.
is, and she was showing me all this stuff, the cameras, and I remember, I think someone took a picture, and I have a picture, and I'm just like there, like standing behind her, like looking at this, and I'm
Yeah,
like,
it's
"This
the
is
best, man." I
It,
mean,
was, it was such a great,
Oh,
like
yeah.
the on-air personalities. We had so many good ones. And same on the radio side, like there's some really cool, nice people there.
Yeah.
And you were one of those. And I always felt like that every time I walked down in the station, "Hey, Jason, how's it going, man?" You know, like just walking by in the hallway, grabbing a coffee. And I think that's what makes you special in the city, to be honest.
thank you.
And that's why when I wanted you to come on the show, and when you said yes, I was a bit like super excited, dude. Though.
Yeah,
I was like, fuck yes, I got Jason. I'd love
Yeah.
to hear more. And dude, like honestly, it was a really fun time, like
Yeah, man,
sitting down with
totally.
you,
Same.
and you're welcome here any
Don't
time.
say that because I'll be back here tomorrow.
Dude, fucking come, man. Anytime you want. Like, it's amazing, and there's so much more we haven't even touched.
Yeah,
So
we'll do it again, man.
There's
I love
definitely
that.
another one, hopefully.
Love it, man. Thank you, man.
That's
Thanks,
it.
bro.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you. That was rad.
Hey, thanks for checking out the show. It's been awesome working on this project. And if you like it, tell a friend. And if you want to support the show, you can by 1, subscribing and liking our YouTube channel at the DMW Podcast. 2, you can go to our website and sign up to our mailing list at the dmwpodcast.com. And 3, you can follow us on Instagram at the DMW Podcast. Thanks again for all of your support. My name is Stef, and this is the Dead Man Walking Podcast.